think you have some idea as to what's already been discussed between Kyle Dubas and other parties related to Jake Guentzel, you don't. Trust me on that. Morning to you. Good Tuesday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. Penguins versus Blue Jackets tonight. That's a 7:08 p.m. face-off at PPG Paints Arena. I'll be there covering it for DK Pittsburgh Sports. Full written column on the day to follow. And I'm fully expecting no one will care, meaning at all, about this game. I mean, maybe in the moment you're watching your team and, you're seeing them either try or not try. You're either happy about it or you're unhappy about it. It's right there in front of you. I don't know. I look at the two games in Alberta and I say to myself, that's it. I say to myself that with the amount of things that Dubas would have to take care of this week, there's no way that he hasn't already made up his mind. And from there's no way that he hasn't already made up his mind about both the type and the scope of moves that he might want to make. At the head of that list, of course, will be the fate of Jake. And to reiterate my stance on this, I'd like to see Jake kept. I'd like to see Jake signed to an extension. I'd like to see any number of other players moved out, not as punishment, not even necessarily just as cap savings, but in order to get real, live, young players into the mix. What the Penguins have to offer that's not Jake isn't as attractive as Jake, but it can add up to something significant, both in terms of return and in terms of cap space. I would start by trying, and I mean hard, to trade Tristan Jarry and his 5-year, $26 million contract. I believe there will be suitors for Jarry. And I believe that the longer that you wait to move him, and then Joel Blomqvist does come along from Wilkes-Barre Scranton. He's an AHL All-Star down there. He's 22 years old. This is his first North American season. He's been everything they could have hoped for in this season, maybe a little bit more. Now's the time. Now's the time to move Jarry. So if you were to move Jarry, Riley Smith, Ricard Raquel, who knows, a couple other players even, you're clearing suddenly $20 million or something to that effect off the cap. And between that and the additional 3 that you'll have once Jeff Carter finally retires, you're going to have a lot of money left and you're going to have no problem paying the guy who's going to be either your leading goal scorer or your second leading goal scorer for quite a while to come. This is a really, really good hockey player who I think hasn't even been sufficiently appreciated in Pittsburgh because he's been Sidney Crosby's line mate. Ask Sid. The next point of order becomes, how much is Jake worth? And of course, there are 2 perspectives to that. One would be to the team attempting to trade for him, and the other would be to the Penguins if they make an honest attempt to keep him. When it comes to a trade, GMs can't make demands and expect them to be fulfilled, but GMs can make requests. They can angle in certain directions. And if I'm Dubas, and I already understand this to be the case, he'd rather have active prospects than he would draft picks. That makes a ton of sense. That makes it at least plausible that whoever these players are that come in return can be part of something alongside Sid, while Sid is still one of the better players on the planet. Whereas a draft pick, even a genuinely promising one like a Braden Yeager, they take a while. They don't show up here with NHL bodies. They take time. They take physical training. They take patience. So I don't want to see draft picks unless they're just throw-ins, unless the system that you're talking about doesn't really have prospects, kind of like Pittsburgh's. And if you're talking about getting a player the magnitude of Jake who can put more than one team over the top by being added to their rosters right now, and you, of course, make sure that it's a sign and trade so that team knows he's not going to walk at the end of this season, yeah, you can get some good prospects. You can do that. You might even get prospects that are close enough to the NHL to be, here. Now, from the money standpoint, from the Penguins keeping Jake, well, this is where it gets a little bit screwy, and I say that mostly because it involves the Maple Leafs, and a lot of what they do is screwy. There's a reason they haven't won a Stanley Cup since, let me see, memory serves, 1967. What happens, and this affects everyone in hockey, is that people in Toronto, not just the ones who run the Leafs, but people in Toronto in general, get so hyper when there's a good player added to their roster that you could be forgiven if you walked around that city looking around for the Alexei Ponikarovsky statue. And as such, they will also way overpay their players. It's one thing to do that with Austin Matthews, who might be the most dangerous goal scorer in hockey right now. It's quite another to make superstars out of Mitch Marner, William Nylander, Morgan Riley. These are the perfect examples of Toronto-made stars. And what ends up happening is these guys get paid, I think Marner's at $11 million a year or so. I don't have their numbers in front of me, but both Marner and Nylander are paid between them on average 8-figure salaries. So yeah, if you're Jake and you're Jake's agent and you're around similar ages to where Marner and Nylander were, you're going to start with that, and that's going to make for a difficult negotiation because not everybody should be responsible for the Maple Leafs' stupidity. But I could see putting together a package that's more than what the Penguins gave out to, let's say, obviously to, Raquel and Brian Rust and so forth. A similar term, 5 years, maybe you go 6 years, something to that effect, and you pay into the 8 range, $8 million. Is some of that going to be accounting for the fact that he played here already all these years at a way below market level contract? Sure. Would he have been overall worth it over that span of time? I believe that he would be. When we come back, J1Q. Today's J1Q comes from Adam, who says, DK, I'm a 40-year-old diehard Penguins fan. I've seen the best and the worst of this franchise. My question is, why must Sidney Crosby finish his career here? I understand his iconic status for the city and the franchise. I consider him to be at least a top 10 player in hockey history. But there's not going to be a rebuild around Sid. Not at his age, and not with this barren prospect pool. As long as he's here, the team will not commit to a full rebuild, and they will never be bad enough to do so organically. At the same time, they'll never be good enough to be more than a fringe playoff contender. Over-the-top nostalgia is what got the Penguins into this current mess. Keeping Sid condemns this team to this endless cycle of mediocrity for the remainder of his tenure. Adam, if you had left out the Sid stuff, I couldn't be more on board with you. But I have gotten the sense over the past 48 hours, or maybe 72 hours, really, since the collapse in Calgary, that a lot of people who really care about the Pittsburgh Penguins, about this franchise, and about its history are really mad. And they'll say, possibly even believe, almost anything right now that would create a change, that would stop this, I'm going to borrow you from your own phraseology here, endless cycle of mediocrity. I'm with you on stopping the endless cycle of mediocrity. I am not even in the solar system. with you when it comes to Sid. Certain things really are bigger than the next game that you're playing. Certain things really are bigger than the game itself. Sidney Crosby is a Pittsburgh Penguin. Sidney Crosby is a Pittsburgh institution. So long after, not a soul on this earth will remember anything about the 2023-24 Penguins hockey season. They'll all remember Sid, and they'll remember Mario. And that is so much more significant than anything else that we're talking about. The other component of the argument that you put forth there, which is appreciated, by the way, is this concept of a full rebuild. Again, that's your term. Full rebuild. These are not the Pirates. You don't have full rebuilds in hockey. Almost nobody does that. The Coyotes do it because they're playing in a high school barn and they don't have any money. The Sabres have been doing it for 20 years because they don't know what the hell they're doing in Buffalo and haven't in all that time. So tell me who else and where else you see this full rebuild. Where is that? Is it Detroit? Can you say the Red Wings? Because when the Red Wings lost all of their Hall of Fame guys and then finally, Henrik Zetterberg and Pavel Datsyuk, and then, then the Red Wings didn't make the playoffs for the next millennia. Is that because they were in a full rebuild or because they, until Steve Yzerman got there, didn't know what the hell they were doing? This is a salary cap league. It comes with a salary ceiling and a salary floor to which all teams are required to adhere. The range between the ceiling and the floor is roughly $20 million, which is not very much. So your full rebuild concept, which I would interpret as being just nothing but a bunch of kids out there, you've gotten rid of all your old guys or whatever, would not be permissible in this league. We keep rewinding, and I think you did too, because you also made a reference to how you've been through the worst of times, and I have to presume you're pointing back to 2003, as everybody tends to do. That era no longer exists in any form. There's a salary cap system in place with a ceiling and a floor. The Penguins, as a company, are making a killing. They're not in anywhere near the financial circumstances that they were back then when they were giving away pretty much everybody. Jaromir Jagr, Alexei Kovalev, Robert Lang, Martin Straka, and in every direction they just gave players up because they couldn't pay them. That's not this. There's nothing to require a full rebuild. So even setting aside your Sid stuff, the full rebuild concept is fantasy land. It doesn't exist unless you want to tune into my daily shot of Pirates every day. We can talk about rebuilds all you want because they are the kings of rebuilding. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Penguins. We're going to do another one of these tomorrow.